During my most recent visit to Tawang, I had a chance to interview the local stakeholders that included the former, existing and former intelligence officials, army officers, and also the localites. And we found that, and there is a specific pattern in constructing those roads. So there will be one major road which is running right from Pangong to Ningchi, and from that road you have different arteries, and good quality living. They are basically changing the narrative. They're winning their hearts. They're creating a pro CCP sentiment in those villages. And among those people who are a little more vulnerable, they are creating spies and assets. Our claim is definitely getting diluted. I mean, if we don't have these, we must agree that the war will not be a war in a very conventional sense. It'll be very different. They'll open up many fronts. They'll open up a front. They'll ask Pakistan to open up a front on the LOC. They'll try to ramp up unrest and civilian problems in Kashmir.
Hello everyone, welcome to Resonant News. Today we have with us Abhinav Pandya, who is a policy analyst specializing in counter-terrorism and Indian foreign policy. In the past, he has advised the former governor of Jammu and Kashmir on security issues. He has also written extensively for both Indian and international media houses. Today, we are discussing China's actions along the line of actual control.
Thank you very much, Lavina, for inviting me. I think I'll just begin with what exactly we mean by the dual use infrastructure. So dual use infrastructure is basically something which can be used for the civilian purposes as well as the military purposes. And this falls in line with the classic art of deception that Chinese strategists, their military forces, they follow. And primarily, it comes from the Sun Tzu's doctrine that deception is the key to winning any war or even any diplomatic exercise. So this is the fundamental philosophy, but I'll just begin my story from my recent visit to Tawang area. So primarily, my main focus has been Kashmir and Pakistan and India's terrorist issues and all that. But even while serving in Kashmir, there was the time when Chinese created problems in Galwan and even in the Ladakh Pangong So area. So definitely, we had an idea of what Chinese are up to, and they were intervening in Kashmir also through Pakistan, basically in narratives and perceptions, and creating a very anti-India sentiment. But then, when you talk to most of the strategic masterminds in India, and some senior ones, they believe that internally, not many of them express it openly, but they believe that China is the main strategic competitor for India. And certainly, both these countries are moving towards some kind of a collision. If not now, then let's say 20 years or 25 years down the line. But given the way things are unfolding, it can be even before that. So in this regard, I must say that China is investing in creating long-term assets. So during my most recent visit to Tawang, I had a chance to interview the local stakeholders that included the former, existing and former intelligence officials, army officers, and also the localites. And we found that they are creating it's a huge, strong infrastructure base opposite to the Arunachal border. And I mean, I got the information about what they're doing right in front of the Arunachal border, but they are investing basically. They are creating this infrastructure right from Pangong So to Ningchi. That's the last point of India China border. That's in the I would say eastern part of Arunachal Pradesh. So in this dual use infrastructure, they are creating roads, tunnels, and bridges. They are creating heliports and helibases, and they are establishing an excellent network of 5G towers in that area. Besides that, they are creating border welfare villages. So in those border welfare villages, you have good quality facilities. They're making people settle in those areas with good living standards, thriving economy, booming tourism. So these things, seemingly it all appears that fine, it's just an infrastructure investment, but there's a very strong strategic military angle hidden behind these initiatives.
Tell me how many helipads have come up, and from what I read in your article, there's also civilian use.
Exactly, we don't have a precise idea about the exact numbers because there are some very fundamental difficulties. In China's case, due to the very strong censorship and the strong scrutiny, it's very difficult to gather human intelligence. And after Galwan episode, it has become almost impossible to collect humans. So human part is not really up to the mark, and so mostly it's based on that the whatever little human that we have and the, I would say, the technical intelligence that we get. So I won't be making any, I would say, no specific claims about the number of the heliports and helibases, but yes, they are creating heliports and helibases near most of the major military installations. So one I have heard of is like near the Lhasa Gonkar, the region that, and then Sonazong village. Sonazong is a major military base. It is right 34 kilometers inside the Chinese border from the Bungla border post. That's in Arunachal Pradesh. And it's one of the major military posts. So this Lhasa Gonkar, Sonazong, and then there's another Longzi area where they're creating these heliports and helibases. And there can be other places also where they're creating. So they're open for the civilian use, but the very fact that they're creating them quite close to the military installations makes it evident that they will be used for casualty evacuation, launching drones, and even other, I would say, aerial vehicles, or for logistics, supplies, everything, during the wartime or any kind of conflict situation arises between the two countries. So this is about the helipads and heliport part. So apart from that, they are creating an excellent network of roads, tunnels, and bridges in that area. So now that area is a very rugged, hilly terrain, and so again, once I would like to go briefly in the background. On the Indian side, right after the 1962 war, we believe that let this area stay in that that state of underdevelopment in terms of roads infrastructure, so that their Chinese movement is blocked because of the rugged terrain. They are not able to cross that area and come into deep into our territory. But I guess we were fundamentally wrong. Chinese made advancements in technology, and on their side, they have created an excellent network of routes. Now they're developing the existing roads, they're upgrading them, and parallel to them, they're creating new roads, which are of the expressway category. And there's a specific pattern in constructing those roads. So there will be one major road which is running right from Pangong to Ningchi, and from that road you have different arteries, kind of going to the border area. Like imagine one major road. I've drawn arteries connecting the major road expressway to the border area. Then you have different axles, the different routes connecting these arteries among each other. Right? So you see a crisscross pattern, okay. And this gives such an advantage to the Chinese, they get an element of surprise. You don't know, like if you block one entry, they can come from the other passage, they can come from the other entry. So they have this element of surprise. Their mobility is very quick, and Chinese mostly use like this wheeled equipment, mostly their radars and their artillery guns and artillery guns and all. So this excellent road network can be immensely helpful. Besides that, this also creates thriving tourism and booming economy. So that in a way brings you a lot of revenue, and also strengthens the claim of the state in that area, which is a disputed territory. I mean, it's an occupied territory. It's Tibet. Okay, but then creating such a huge network of infrastructure, this booming tourism-based economy, it strengthens the Chinese claim. On the other hand, on our side, we still have a very just one road, and it's in a very dilapidated shape, the infrastructure. So if one entry or passage is blocked, we are completely held up. We are stuck. We cannot. We're not able to go to the other area. And also, we have Chinese have deployed this 5G towers in that entire area, but we are still grappling with 3G or 4G towers. Even during my visit, I had major difficulties with the communication. Sometimes the BSNL was working, sometimes it wasn't working. So that's a major issue. Coming to the other part of this, the infrastructure development on the Chinese side, they are creating border welfare villages. So until recently, most of the Tibetans, they were living up in the mountains, in the higher reaches, and they had their natural habitats. So now they're trying to make them settle in those border welfare villages, which are like artificially created villages with excellent facilities. And this gives advantages in many forms. First of all, they get the mountains, and those mountains are available for mining now. Because since the people move out, so the Chinese companies can go and start mining there. And Tibet is it's well known for the huge deposits of rare earth minerals. So that's a big advantage that they get. Then by making these people settle in these villages, giving them good facilities, good income sources, and good quality living, they are basically changing the narrative. They're winning their hearts. They're creating a pro-CCP sentiment in those villages. And among those people who are a little more vulnerable, they are creating spies and assets. Also, these villages have like robust concrete structures where you can put military officers and army deployments during the times of war. So these are also like more of the, I would say, let's say, observation post, or like some kind of a spying post, or a strong base right close to the border. So this is definitely strengthening the Chinese claim in that area. And with these border villages coming up, tourism is going up, economy is booming. So if that happens, again, Chinese claims get stronger in that area. On our side, we are not making sufficient investments, and people from the border areas, they're not getting into grazing anymore. The youngsters are migrating to Guwahati or New Delhi or other metro cities in the search of jobs. So our claim is definitely getting diluted. I mean, if you don't have grazers going to that area, if you don't have border villages, people start migrating from the border villages, then we don't, I mean, certainly, I mean, there's a huge loss in legitimate claims that we make over that area. So that's a major problem from our side. I guess we should really be thinking about it, because Chinese are acting on multiple fronts. We all heard about that string of pearls theory, but especially in this Tibetan area, they're working majorly on the narrative. So with these border welfare villages, there is a very hidden underlying program of the sinicization of that area. And people who are living in these villages, they are all the Tibetan monks and the Buddhist population local. They're getting ideologically indoctrinated. It's like the cultural genocide of Tibetans. Local culture, indigenous culture is just getting completely annihilated in this process. And at the end of it, like Chinese come out, like they get everything. They come out victorious. And it definitely raises a major alarming security concern for us. So now, given this case, like that's what's happening on the India-China border. We are majorly relying on the Americans, and India, US have this, signed various agreements for the strategic partnership. But I think in the event of a war, what Americans can do at the max is sharing intelligence or like getting equipments and weapon systems. But then, I mean, they're not going to get their troops on the ground, which seems very unlikely. But then, if that happens, then there'll be procurement delays in getting those weapon systems and the equipment. And by the time they reach there, I guess the war will already be over. Now, another question comes, with all these, this infrastructure buildup. Oh, definitely, we should all be thinking about it. That how strong is the possibility of Chinese engaging India into at least a full-scale war, conventional war? We really need to understand the Chinese mindset. What are the compulsions, that can drive them for this kind of engagement? I guess there are many compulsions. First and foremost, they are looking for this world power domination kind of a status. So now, if you have a little country, in your backyard challenging your status, then you can't be a world. So certainly, in terms of optics, it plays a major role that, I mean, you drop India down. Like just the way it played in 1962, India was a leader of non-aligned movement, and to put Nehru down, the Chinese unleashed that war, and after that, India's image, the goodwill, the international stature suffered a major damage. Same thing can happen now. Secondly, if Xi Jinping faces some kind of a major credibility loss among its domestic constituency, then definitely India is an enemy, like, where you can definitely do some adventure and, and shore up your support once again in the domestic constituency. So India is one enemy which Chinese always need for various reasons, for strategic reasons, for the domestic, I would say, political reasons, to keep their population pacified, like just go and do some adventure on the Indian side and get some support in the domestic, among the domestic constituency. Then they also realize that American support to India's, this whole situation is a little dicey, like, it's on a slippery slope. So they know, I mean, that may be one reason, which can actually, compel them, like motivate them to do some action in those higher mountain ranges. But as I recently mentioned that in the event of crisis, at the most we are going to get intelligence and weapon systems from the America. Okay, but by the time they arrive, it will be too late. And on top of that, still there are major issues between India and the US. Recently, as we saw, this whole Pannoon issue and frictions are there. I guess there is some major lack of understanding. So even in the Indian strategic establishment, there are many doubts regarding the American support to India in the event of a war or conflict with China. Thirdly, if they fail to do something major in the Taiwan Straits, then definitely India comes as a good option to at least get some territory or show themselves as, as some kind of a winner also a strong action from the optics point of view. So certainly these are the areas where they can attack India, and they have done that in the past. So we should always keep that in mind. And they're the people who plan for like next 100 years. They have already pre-decided, things. So if that's the part of their strategy, then we should be mentally prepared. And definitely one more thing, if in case if they do some action on the border, then we have to think a little more widely, and we must agree that the war will not be a war in a very conventional sense. It'll be very different. They'll open up many fronts. They'll open up a front. They'll ask Pakistan to open up a front on the LOC. They'll try to ramp up unrest and civilian problems in Kashmir, in other parts of India. They may try to do cyber attacks on your Sensex and on your stock exchanges, on your critical installations. So it will be a very different kind of a war. But then, yes, the main focus of this today's discussion is the dual use infrastructure. So I just mentioned a few things from my research.
I'm completely fine with you explaining how China plans to attack India in different ways. I mean, there are myriad of ways that they can attack us, and I'm glad you mentioned that.
So, thank you. China is more of a strategic enemy. Well, I say that Pakistan is an existential threat to India, because Pakistan is not just about a territory or I would say simply a geopolitical entity. Pakistan is an idea of an Islamic state, Islamic extremist state, which predates its formal, I would say, coming into shape in 1947. I mean, it's a civilizational existential threat which has its origins about 1200 years back. But China is more of a strategic rival to India right now. It's like a proper rivalry between two nation states, just or two emerging powers. So it's a different kind of a situation. Certainly, I mean, no, we have many odds against us, because China has a dictatorial government, so they can take actions swiftly. But in India's case, it's democracy. Then there are a lot of tremendous internal fault lines, the democratic system. So definitely, we are oddly placed against the Chinese. So I mean, this is all the part of a long-term strategy. But then we should really start thinking about it.
Thank you so much, Abhinav. Thank you so much for taking time out